ARK session. Welcome to ARK session this morning on professionalising the housing sector. My name's Helen Skur. I'm a director with ARK, and it's fantastic to see so many of you signing up to this session this morning. We've got some really insightful speakers and a variety of different topics that we are covering. I have just confirmed we will be recording the session, so we hope everyone's okay with that. If you could please mute if you haven't muted, just so when the speakers are speaking, they're not interrupted, that'd be really appreciated. And if you could use the chat box for any comments or questions as we're going through this morning's session. And then at the end of the sessions, following Joanne's session, we will then have an opportunity for questions and debate, at which point we'll ask people if you could pop your cameras on if you're asking questions. That would be really appreciated. Thank you. So hopefully you can all now see the slides. Wonderful. So just to reconfirm, today's session is very much about exploring the housing qualifications and how organisations and individuals can meet now the change in qualification requirements for the sector, and also how culture can positively impact you as individuals and your organisation. We firmly believe that behaviours and culture and learning are very much linked, both for people and for the wider organisations. So please sit back and enjoy the session this morning. So I'm pretty sure most of you can relate to this particular slide. It feels like we are very much in stormy waters at the moment. And as this guy is sort of looking to whether it's the north, the east, the south, the west, there's lots of storms ahead for the sector. And I think we're all grappling with lots of issues, lots more regulation, a big focus and spotlight from the Ombudsman, big issue in terms of retention and recruitment of staff. And certainly feedback from our clients is people are generally starting to feel quite overwhelmed with it all. So we're hoping that today we can give you some tools and techniques and certainly some contacts to help you and your organisation address some of these challenging times. So just reflecting on this current landscape for our sector, these are things I'm sure you're all very familiar with. We're experiencing a huge amount of economic pressure and financial viability issues. Us as individuals, as well as us as professionals, are seeing higher inflation, something that no one could have predicted a couple of years ago, and that is having a huge impact on businesses and on operating costs. The 7% rent cap has brought its own challenges, and the downgrade of V2 is now seen very much as the financial norm. So the financial viability downgrades that we are experiencing in the sector now is more and more frequent. We know our clients are struggling with headroom in business plans, so people are reforecasting business plans to ensure they can continue to maintain their homes effectively and also to develop new, very much needed social homes and housing for customers. The impact on tenants is huge. You know, the cost of increase in living, the impact on fuel poverty, and again, what we are experiencing is increase in rent arrears in organisations now, and that in itself is creating, as we know, a trend around homelessness that we haven't seen for some years. Many of you will be playing catch up on delayed planned and routine maintenance with a backlog of maintenance and repairs, and that's creating tensions in organisations, both for tenants who are now reporting repairs and those who are waiting because of the backlog. Building safety, net zero, decarbonisation is costly and again impacting on people's business plans, and we want to continue to manage what is a market downturn whilst continuing to actually develop new homes. Reputation and culture, and I've sort of suggested that's about rebalancing the scales from my perspective. Having been a housing professional for probably 35 years now, which seems an eternity, when we start seeing some of the publicity and the negative press around organisations, it's painful and it's concerning, and for those working in organisations, it can create real tension and upset. So we've seen a huge focus by ITV through the Panorama programmes. We had the Croydon investigation that really started the ball rolling. We were involved in that. We've had most recently Rochdale Borough-wide homes and AWABs, the coroner's inquest, and we know at RBH they are working really hard to turn that organisation and are doing some great things around culture. Michael Gove, the spotlight on housing, and we will continue now with the pending local and general election next year with a spotlight on housing. You know, that isn't going away. And then we've got the Ombudsman focus around customer engagement and complaints handling. So there's lots of new challenges for you around regulation, around culture and around learning. So today we're very much focusing on the Social Housing Act 2023 and the new professional standards and how that impacts on culture and behaviours. So for those of you that know Jill Murray is the current and new president of the CIH. I've known Jill for some years and she's incredibly passionate about housing. She started at Byker Grove up in the northeast there as a housing officer and has a real passion, and her mantra for her presidential year is be epic, and I think that's fabulous. And I'm hoping that today when you leave our webinar you will go away and want to be epic and think about those qualifications and your organisational culture and how actually you can perhaps take something back to your colleagues. So today's speakers, we've got some fabulous speakers, so no pressure ladies today. We have Karina Hembry. Karina is the Managing Director from Access Training, and Cathy Howard, who is the Commercial Director of Access Training, and they're going to tell you all about a little bit of background to that organisation. We have Rachel Bennett with us. Rachel is one of our consultants and the newly author of the Shadow Culture book. It is on Amazon. You can buy it. She won't plug it, so I will. And Joanne Taylor, one of our ARK senior consultants, who will sort of bring together the presentations and talk to you a little bit about the sorts of support organisations are now seeking. So without further ado, I would like to hand you across to Karina Hembry, Managing Director, Access Training. So thank you, and over to you, Karina.
Sorry, everyone, I couldn't find my unmute button there. It seemed to have disappeared as I was looking panicked at the screen there. Thanks, Helen. Thank you for that introduction. So, yeah, I'm going to kick us off by giving you a little bit of background to Access Training. You'll all be well aware of ARK and the fantastic work that they do, but just to give you a little bit of a background into Access Training. So we are primarily a training provider. Our mission is to work in partnership with people and organisations to improve skills and employability. We've been around for over 30 years now, and for the last 9 years we've been co-owned by Futures Housing Group and NCHA. So we've got a real strong connection with the housing sector. It's one of our key sort of specialisms. And as you can see there, as part of our work as a training provider, there are a number of things that go alongside that. We do enjoy Ofsted inspections every few years. We're very proud to be a good provider. We are just been awarded expert provider status from the Department of Education as well. And for the last 5 years, we've supported over 6,000 people. So we've got a good track record in supporting people and organisations. Bit of an overview there of the types of organisations that we're currently working with in the housing world, in all sorts of ways. So that in back office things, in customer service administration, or even in property maintenance. And we really focus on trying to shape and train behaviour, culture and knowledge. So exactly as Helen was saying, and the point of this whole webinar today is focusing on that behaviour, on that culture. But for us, the specific bits that we're going to talk around is obviously the Social Housing Act and the changes that are being brought in due to that. So we know that it's going to introduce these new competence and conduct standards. There's a focus, particularly through this act, to start with on senior staff who are viewed as being best placed to drive culture change within organisations. And I'm going to pass over to Cathy in a second, and what she's going to do is give you a bit of an overview of what we know so far, what we think is going to be the case, what is our best guess from all of the information that's out there, but also clarifying some of the things that we're not sure of yet, and also maybe some next steps for you. So I'll hand over now to Cathy.
You're muted, Cathy.
The same problem as Karina there. Good morning, everyone. Sorry, it keeps muting. My hands are here. So I'm the commercial director at Access Training, and I've been leading. Sorry, this keeps muting. I'm not doing anything. My hands are just here. Can everybody hear me all right?
Yes, we can hear you, Cathy, now.
Right. Okay, lovely. So, okay, so thank you. I'll just go back one. Lovely, thank you. I think I have a bit of a time delay. So I'm Cathy Howarth. I'm the commercial director at Access Training. I'm leading on the engagement with the housing associations, particularly working around helping you and supporting you to implement the new changes that are coming with regards to the qualifications. I'm going to give you an overview on where we believe we are so far, and we will share information as and when this comes in. So we've kind of developed quite a network of housing associations that as we're getting new information in, we're sharing that, and I'll talk a little bit about that in our working group later on. So as Karina mentioned, the professionalisation review focuses on the senior staff because they're best placed to sort of drive this through. What we believe is that this is probably only the beginning, and actually if you're looking on a wider scale, this is top down, but actually we need to be looking at bottom up as well. But obviously this is sort of focusing on the levels 4 and 5. So the Act will require that senior executives and senior housing managers will require levels 5 and 4 across the board. There's going to be a consultation early next year. We believe it's going to be implemented from April, and the consultation is early next year, we believe from January. There's going to be 2 consultations, one on DLUHC's direction to the regulation of social housing, requiring them to set the standard, and then one with the regulatory of social housing consultation on the actual standard. And they'll hopefully include things like timings for implementation, approach to setting the competence and conduct requirements, and what the specific qualification requirements are. Sorry, I'm trying to find me. I think my laptop's having a mind of its own at the minute. Okay, so roles that we expect to be in scope then are, so these have originally the sort of job titles, they went forward with job titles, and these were taken from the level 4 apprenticeship from the Institute of Apprenticeships. Now the focus is around the actual functions as opposed to job titles, because the actual apprenticeship is up for review, and any sort of new revision, the criteria will apply. The individuals in scope will be where the primary function of the role and responsibility is the management and delivery of housing management services to social housing tenants. And it's going to focus, as I said, on functions, but it's not going to be exhaustive. I think one sort of surprise that's come out over the months that I've been working on this with the customers I'm working with is that it will include customer services. I think originally that wasn't expected to be in scope, but it actually will include customer services and the sort of repairs and maintenance. So it's your managers around those departments. And I think that's really important. Things that are not going to be in scope are your back office functions, such as the HR and the finance, and the responsibility for care and support. So I think it's really looking at, and as I've been working through with customers, it's really sort of encouraging the customers to look on a wider scale, because I think originally people were just looking at that sort of top layer, but actually it does include those customer services, repairs, maintenance, and tenant management. So it is sort of a lot wider, I think, than anybody originally thought. Information that we don't know is, what's the transition timeline then? So we expect it's going to be implemented from April, but what will the timeline for completion of qualifications be? I was at a meeting where sort of it's been suggested that sort of 5 years would be too long, 2 years is too short, 3 years sort of feels that it would be doable. Just for our sector, when we have to implement new qualifications, we're given a 3-year window. So that does feel, and it is only a feeling, just feel that could be sort of the way they go. And what will happen with people sort of coming up to retirement? You know, will they, and what will the timescale be there? If you've got somebody who's going to retire in 5 years, I was at a sort of a webinar, and they said that if it was in 5 years, then they would still have to do the qualification. If it was within, say, 2 years, then they would be exempt for that. But things like exemptions are really not clear. Sort of all the qualifications must be Ofqual regulated, and there will be exemptions around for anyone with a housing degree. But what about leaders with years of experience but no qualifications? What, if any, exemptions will there be for those, and what fast track options? We keep getting asked about fast track options. However, so to take into account recognition of prior learning, you also have to prove competence, and to sort of be able to do that, we've also got to be able to assess something. So at the minute, it's all really up in the air about what fast track options there are, if any. And currently, at the moment, as we all know, there's only CIH, there's an awarding organisation by their sort of requirements, and what, if any, sort of alternative awarding organisations will come and have an appetite for this. And then how would the sector feel about that? Would the sector sort of recognise that actually if there was a faster, sort of more cost-effective way, but with a different... And then once all staff are qualified, what will CPD look like? Will that be something that you have to, you know, will it be a workshop, a unit accreditation that you have to do every 2-3 years? And that, again, is part of what this consultation hopefully will all iron out. So how we're going to implement all this? It's absolutely huge, and demand is going to be greater than supply. There's a limited number of CIH approved training providers across the sector. Currently, there's around 5. There's a national shortage of qualified trainers, particularly for apprenticeships, because to be able to deliver an apprenticeship, you need sort of a different skill set and compliance and issues. And actually, trainers, they actually don't want to, you know, sort of it's not their passion to be involved in the apprenticeship. So it is a different sort of delivery. But apprenticeships also, whilst we understand that you will all want to use your apprenticeship levy to fund this, because the cost is going to have an implication on your organisation, the reality is that the vast majority of the managers, particularly your serious experienced managers that just don't have a qualification, won't be eligible for the apprenticeship because they will be already too experienced. An apprenticeship requires that you need a substantial amount of new knowledge, skills and behaviours. And it's likely that those managers that we're talking about and engaging with won't be. So just some ideas on what we're working with, the organisations we're working with, what are they, sort of how they adapting, what they're getting up to now. So skills audits seem to be the sort of buzzword of the sector. Everybody's looking at the skills audit, looking at how many are in scope, and out of that number in scope, how many require the qualifications, and then prioritising the staff who do need the qualifications. How will this fit into your delivery plan? If you've got 50 people in who require the qualification in your organisation, it's highly unlikely that your organisation will be able to sort of enrol all 50 people all at once. So it's really looking at the priority around those, and obviously fitting those into your budget. Think about long-term budgets. We were on our working group last week, and we were talking and sort of the budget rounds that are happening now, the L&D teams are putting in their budget an X amount for this year and for the next sort of 3 years of those people. What we would really, really, really strongly advise and plead and beg with you is please share your feedback via the consultations. We don't have, as much as I've been on deal-up meetings myself, we only come from a provider. We don't have any influence, as you know, as you would as an organisation on this. Ours is sort of very different. It's around the provider. And be an early adopter. You know, I think we're all thinking, as much as I want to please absolutely every single customer that I work with, what I don't want to be saying to people is we need to put you on a waiting list. So there's not many providers. Obviously, we're one of the providers. I'd rather not put people on a waiting list, but we're slightly nervous that may what happens. So think about being an early adopter. I'm not sure how many are on this call. We've got quite a lot of great organisations on this call. So maybe just 1 or 2 from each organisation would sort of see 2 or 3 cohorts move forward. So, you know, that's we would really strongly encourage that. Sorry, my laptop is, that's it. Okay, so how can we support you then? So be a delivery partner is our first sort of ask, you know, come and talk to us. Let's see how we can work together. We'll sit down with you, look at how we'll identify who with you, plan it, look at the most delivery and cost-effective way for your organisation. You know, it might be a mixture. It could be that, you know, you've got X amount of people, a portion of those may be eligible for the apprenticeship. It might be the others that are straight to the CIH route. It's important to mention that there is not an apprenticeship at level 5. It is the CIH knowledge qualification route only. And apprenticeships are about skills, knowledge and behaviours. They'll take around 18 to 24 months, whereas the CIH qualification can be completed within 8 to 10 months. So think about that as your organisation, but we can work together with that. You know, we are very much on this journey together. We can involve you in our working group. So we've set up a working group in conjunction with WHG. We've had 2 meetings now. Feedback's been fantastic, found it really informative. We've sort of set up our own little link in our Teams meet where we'll message people with any updates of information. We've got around about, I would say, 15 organisations on that at the minute. So it's great. So if anybody wants to get involved in that, it's an open door. Please just let me know. And if anybody would like a conversation with me afterwards about their individual organisation, I'd be more than happy to do that. So I'm now going to hand over to Rachel Bennett. So thank you for listening.
So I'm just requesting control of the slides, just in case you wonder where I've gone. Okay, so hopefully that's worked. Let's give that a go. There you go. Perfect. Okay, so thank you all very much for attending, first of all. So I'm Rachel Bennett. I am one of ARK's associate consultants, and I'm here today just to talk about some company culture and touch upon shadow cultures, and then finish off with a little bit of a ramble through how we can potentially look at professionalising the housing sector. Okay. So as somebody's already asked in the chat, the slides will be shared. So don't worry about trying to take the notes if you need to. So what we're going to go through now is just a little bit of a talk through what company culture is, and then some of the factors that shape company culture. Obviously, we all want a positive culture. So we'll have a little look at that. And then we'll be looking at a new concept around shadow cultures and what shadow culture is, and then how we can potentially address that shadow culture, particularly when we're trying to professionalise the housing sector. And then, like I say, we'll have the last 2 slides will be a little bit on professionalising the housing sector. Okay, so the first of all, we'll go through company culture. So what is company culture? And it's an interesting one. I did some research not so long ago about how many different types of company culture there are. And this one particular article said there was 217. Where that came from, I do not know. And it just gives you an idea of how complex company culture is. You know, there's a lot of different facets to it. But the term for company culture has become widely used in business world today, and generally it describes our shared values, beliefs, attitudes, behaviours and practices. And those things then come together to shape the behaviours of our employees within our organisations. Culture sets the tone for how individuals interact with each other and how decisions are made and how we all approach work together. For me, though, I would explain culture as something I can't always quite put my finger on. You know, when you go and buy a new house and you go in and you're kind of like, oh yeah, I like this house, or I don't like this house. And there's no right and wrong, but sometimes you just know what fits and what doesn't. So for me, it's very much about what I see when I go into companies and I'm sitting in companies, how that company and those employees make me feel, and how people behave and how I behave when I'm around people, and what I hear. So sometimes that's through what I hear through the grapevine, sometimes it's what I hear through the communication as well. So it's a bit of an amalgamation of all of those there. Okay, so factors that can shape organisational culture, as I'm sure you're aware, there's loads of different factors. I've picked out the 4 that I think are the most popular ones at the moment. Leadership has got to be one of the biggest factors that can shape your organisational culture. The actions and decisions and the values that leaders demonstrate really model the behaviour for what's required for that organisation going forward. The next one is values and beliefs. So core principles and beliefs that are upheld by that organisation, again, form that culture and influence behaviour. And again, on decision making, it really influences how decisions are made. Employee interactions. So this is around how employees communicate with each other, and we know, don't we, since the pandemic's happened, that we've got a lot more virtual. I mean, this sort of session, would we have done this more 5 years ago, or would we have been in a room together interacting? That all has an effect on how we behave and our culture and how we manage things. We were having a conversation just before this about our sort of videos and having avatars of us instead of our photographs, and again, how does that interact with the culture and what does that say? And then the last one on here is about company policies and practices, and this one for me is a really important one, because we sometimes put policies out and procedures and practices, and then we communicate them, but sometimes we forget to really look at the language that we use in those policies, and they really do kind of shape some of that culture, because if you're putting a policy out that's telling people what to do, well, that's the culture that you're starting to create. So it's just having a look at those factors that shape that. Okay, so why did my slide not go down? It was going all so well. I've lost my slides. Oh, see, Kathy, it's not just you, it's all gone wrong. There you go. Okay, so the benefits of a positive culture. So obviously we're all after a positive culture, aren't we? So as I say on the beginning of the slide, there are many benefits. But again, this is just sort of a quick run around culture. So the first benefit is around your employee engagement. If you've got a great culture, you're going to predominantly have more engaged employees, and more engaged employees generally means they're going to contribute in a positive way, and you're going to have a little bit more of a company success if you've got more engaged employees. Talent attraction and retention, that's been a really big one for us as a sector for quite a while, and actually it's an interesting one. I was talking to somebody just yesterday about this very topic, and whether actually professionalising the housing sector will now give us more of an issue with recruitment, or actually will it help bring more youngsters into the housing sector. So there's a whole conversation there on that one as well. But having a positive culture is definitely a really good start to making sure that you're getting the great talent in there. And then alignment with your company goals. So that this one is around, if you've got that really high performing culture, you've got your company mission and your vision and your values, and everybody's on the same journey. So people are not going off on the little sort of roads down to the little villages. They're all staying on the motorway, and people know where they're going, and they're collectively going together. And then The last one in here is around enhanced collaboration and performance. So this one is around having a positive culture fosters collaboration, communication and teamwork, which ultimately leads to improvements and a better work environment. However, there's always a but. So, however, for me, culture is a double-edged sword. And so this is where I'd just like to briefly introduce the concept of a shadow culture. So for me, a shadow culture refers to a hidden or unofficial set of beliefs, values and behaviours that can exist within an organisation alongside their official and visible culture. So we've just talked really briefly about values and mission, etc., which the company is putting out as a corporate piece of work. But this is about the bits that are not said. So these are the hidden bits that sometimes are in organisations. The shadow culture may arise due to various factors such as power dynamics, resistance to change, so hence this conversation here around professionalising our sector, lack of alignment between leadership and employees, or potentially gaps in communication. So there's lots of different reasons a shadow can start, and it can just be a little tiny thing, or it can grow into something much bigger, which we really don't want. The presence of a shadow culture can really hinder an organisation's performance and impede teamwork and create a negative work environment. So by way of a quick couple of examples, have you ever been to, I don't know, in a one-to-one or in a team meeting, or you've just gone into a building and they've got the values and the mission on the wall and they've got all their corporate branding everywhere and it all looks great, it looks really great. And it might say things like, you know, we've got values of trust and empowerment and all these fantastic words. But actually, that's not what you feel. So go back into that first slide around, it's not what you feel, it's not what you hear, it's not what you see. There's something different. To me, that's what I'm describing as that shadow. So it's that disconnect of what is actually on the wall versus what's actually what you feel, what you're there. The other one, which I come across a lot, is, for example, the unwritten rules about working hours. So you might take a new job on, or you might be in a team and you might be having one-to-ones with your manager and you're being told, yeah, we're a 9-to-5 organisation, might be a little bit of overtime after that, but we really want to look after your well-being. We really want to make sure that, you know, you're doing the best job you can. So please don't overwork. But then the reality is you're getting emails from people at 9-10 o'clock at night and you feel like you need to reply to those, and everybody else is doing that. So again, it's that kind of disconnect between what you're being told and what's actually happening. So to kind of conclude that, for me, it's the gap, the shadow is the gap between what a company says and what a company does. Now, it's not necessarily just a company. It could be what a person says or does, or a team of people says and does, but you get the general gist of the idea. So it's that bit in the middle, that disconnect. Okay, so why is it important to reveal the shadows? So why am I talking about this little bit in the middle, and why is that important? Well, it helps align how people naturally behave at work with what the company wants, and to make sure that everybody's on the same page. So if you're talking to people and they're nodding and they're going, yeah, we get this, but actually the reality is that they're not engaged in it, you really need to understand that, particularly when we come to this professionalising the qualifications topic. It also boosts how involved employees are by understanding what motivates them and using that to make the projects more successful. So again, it's that getting to know people, what makes them tick, what makes them really want to put 110% in. When you know about unofficial ways people talk or share information, you can communicate better. You can help to stop that wrong information from spreading, and you can make things a lot more open. Okay, understanding why people might resist the change helps the company handle the change more smoothly and deals with problems before they get bigger. And then finally, spotting new and different ideas from how things are normally done can help you come up with better solutions and different ways of making decisions. So this shadow is not always a bad thing. If you can identify the shadow and then talk about it and be open and authentic, you might find a different way of communicating and a better way of bringing people in with you. So addressing that shadow, addressing the shadow culture requires a commitment to open dialogue, transparency, and inclusivity. So being really open, but making sure that you're inclusive as well. Don't leave people out of those conversations. Organisations must create safe spaces for all employees to voice their experiences, challenge existing norms, and actively participate, shaping a more authentic and aligned organisational culture. So by acknowledging and addressing a shadow culture, organisations can foster a culture that promotes trust, collaboration, and overall well-being for employees. Okay, so just 2 more slides left from myself. So what I want to do now is just quickly go through a little process that you may want to use to help you when you're starting to think about professionalising the housing sector. And on the top of the slide, you'll see my little caveat saying there around, please, please, please remain watchful for any emerging shadows. And it's just kind of, sometimes it's just having that shadow culture in the forefront, and then you can keep an eye on it as you're going through some of these processes. So the way I would tackle this would be to identify any identify and engage stakeholders from the start to create a shared vision for change, fostering ownership and commitment to the process. To me, that's really, really important. Get everybody on board, get everybody understanding what it is you're trying to do, why you're trying to do it, and how you're going to do it. Then the second one I'd go down to is then conduct a comprehensive analysis, which was mentioned earlier, and actually is now becoming a bit of a buzz in all of this, isn't it? So conduct that analysis of the organisation's current staffing qualifications to identify the areas for improvement and change. So this one's really about trying to be on the forefront. We're not quite sure what's going to happen with the regulations, but we've got enough of an idea to be able to start putting our ducks in a row, as it were. And I think that's something we really need to urge us to be getting on with. And then emphasise the importance of regular feedback from employees, customers and stakeholders to keep the change efforts responsive and aligned to those evolving needs. So again, this feedback, this communication, you'll see that theme with me. It's very much about keep talking, keep airing things out with people. And then lastly, last slide, utilise best practice. So we've had somebody already say today about different working groups, different webinars coming on things like this, you know, and ask questions at the end. So utilise the best practice, utilise what other people are doing, and then be creative with your strategies to tailor some solutions to address the challenges with your organisations. Develop a detailed plan for implementing this change, engaging employees with the process for successful change efforts to make sure that you are successful. Regularly evaluate the process. Even if it's in small bits, keep regularly evaluating to make sure that you're still on track and that you've not gone off piece somewhere. And make sure that the processes are also going to be integrated into some of the standards that go forward. So for example, I've put on here around recruitment because it's one I had a conversation with somebody about the other day around. Even now we can start looking at our recruitment processes and we can start saying, actually, you know, what's our advert saying, what's our job description saying, are they future proof now? So making sure that everything is becoming ingrained there. And the last one that I've put on here, because I'm very passionate about that one, is please celebrate success. Don't just leave it to the end. Celebrate success as you go. Remember, in that shadow culture, the idea is to get rid of that shadow, is to be aware of it, communicate, talk, celebrate successes. Okay, hopefully that was really helpful for you. That's my slides over with, and I'm going to pass over to Jo now. Thank you.
Hopefully I have now got control, so thank you everybody. So some really great information there, I think, with regards to professionalising the sector and what's going on at the moment. So some really good lens on that, and then as Rachel then tied that together about actually how that culture really, you know, pulls that all together. So I'm hoping that I'm going to just tie that in. So I guess some of the things that we are hearing, seeing and feeling right now, as Helen said when she started, we are all in the same storm, but we're in very different ships. So and that poor man in his umbrella, I'm sure we've worked with many clients over the last 12 months. So I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about what we are experiencing right now. And I guess where does that information come from? So we've been running throughout the last 12 months a series of 360-degree feedback with executive teams and leaders. We've run a series of cultural workshops. We've done lots of training and development. So we've had the damp and mould, finding our silence. We've run hundreds of staff surveys. And why is that important? That's important because we have spoken to thousands of housing professionals this year alone. So we have been workshops, we have been talking to people, asking them about their experience in how they're finding, their day to day. So we have had that first-hand feedback from colleagues that I'm sure many of you have worked with. Just telling us actually, what does it feel like at the minute? What is their culture? One of the nice things I heard about culture, which has really stuck with me, is culture is how you feel Sunday night about Monday morning. And I really like that. So culture, as Rachel was saying, it's about our shared values, our beliefs, our assumptions, but it's actually around the personality and the character of an organisation. As Rachel was saying, it's about when we walk into that business, what does it feel like? And very much, I'm going to tie in around that kind of the leadership and management, because they very much dictate some of that culture. Now, Rachel talked about the policies and the processes and how things are done. And what we know is that very often people are saying to us, well, we want to do this, but that prohibits us from doing that, or we're told this, however reality means we are performance managed by doing that. So there is these conflicting messages, as Rachel said, the bit that falls in the gap, that shadow culture that falls down the middle. It is around an organisation's history and environment, and as a sector we've had a really tough couple of years. So we have moved, as Rachel said, we would have all been sat in a fabulous rooms, probably in Birmingham. We'd have driven up, we'd have had a coffee, we'd have had biscuits this morning, we'd have all got together in the same room, we'd have had water, coffee conversations, when we're getting our teas and coffees and grabbing our water, which we just miss out. So the way that we operate has changed, and that does impact our culture. The everyday, the things that people are hearing, seeing and feeling is very different. So the culture impacts every facet of business. Again, as the team have shared, and Rachel's done that deep dive, it's the way that the employees are speaking to each other. It's around our work-life balance. I'm going to talk about some that flexibility and what does hybrid working mean, and around how do we deal with challenges constantly, fight or flight at the minute. Some of the things that we've been talking about when we're talking about culture and the impact that it's having right now, some of the words that we are hearing from colleagues across the sector is things like that people don't feel like they care, so leaders don't care for them. They're under pressure. Cannon fodder we've had, feel like we're set out to battle. These are stress, pressure, challenge, the amount of work we're doing around resilience, mental toughness, because we want colleagues to be able to deal with the stresses and the pressures of organisations. But actually very often this is coming down from our leaders and our managers. So professionalising the sector is brilliant, and we're going to have those qualifications that support, but actually really looking at the behaviours, the personality of our leaders, looking at the values, as Rachel said. What are our values of our business, and are we living them? So often we're doing cultural workshops and you ask teams, what are your cultures? What is the culture? What's the values? And they would say, we don't live our values, or they're on the website somewhere, or I don't really understand them. They're part of my PDP, so we get them out once a year, but they're not the way that people live and breathe. And hybrid working has really made a big divide. We've got a lot of now where culture could have been set very much around the organisation of when you walked in there, the departments, the open planned working, being able to have coffee. Some organisations within our sector have got well-being rooms and pool tables, and they were all great things. Now hybrid working means that most people work like we probably are today, in an office, in a part of our homes where we see very, very few people within our organisation. So the culture now is being very much dictated by the interactions that we have, majority by our team, our managers and our leaders. So our leaders have a really, really big part to play. That leadership, looks at the motivation, that discretionary effort that you're going to get from your colleagues. So how your leaders, and I smile because when we think about that discretionary effort and to show you care. When I go away, my director phones me to say, have you got there safely? Just checking in, just making sure you've arrived. Is your hotel okay? just the small things to know that actually you are more than an employee, that you are a person. And lots of these small incidental conversations are missed. Those check-ins when you're in a big organisations are missed. Colleagues aren't feeling that personalised approach. So when those leaders really do care, they do spend that extra effort, it does translate into more competition. Now that the competitive performance and the development and that, you know, positive culture, it's the discretionary effort that you get because people want to do the little bit extra, and we're going to all be relying on the little bit extra because that's what's going to get us through. It's that sense of growth, it's the sense of self-esteem, it's about having that confidence. Rachel was talking about having that open conversation, but open conversations come with trust. You know, what's the level of trust like within your organisations? And as leaders and as managers, how are you creating that? So while we have those qualifications, which are brilliant, do they look at us as our personality, how we show up as individuals? As Jill said, as Helen referred to, her presidential campaign about being epic, her being epic is about being educated, being professional, being in control, and being CIH. So when we look at that professional lens, again, just looking at those professional standards, but also mentions those personal competencies. And I think that's the bit that's really, really key, how we are showing up. And if we don't know where we're starting from, we don't know where we're going. There are so many leadership development programs at the moment that are looking at individualized programs, which are, this is for my organisation, this is the culture of our organisation, this is the methodology we want, but they're not personalised to that leader. And understanding that leadership style, understand how that leader is showing up with their team can be really, really important. I'm just going to share one of the, I guess, a measure that we use, but I guess how it shows up for you. When you're looking at, you know, if you've got leaders that are more dogmatic, which is great because they can be very much, you know, they are very clear around the direction of travel. They know where they're going. They're very, very clear on that high committed, you know, commitment to standards. But what's the stress and pressure that they are creating for colleagues? If you've got colleagues that have got low levels of engagement with other teams, this happens very often when we're speaking to departments, silo working again because of hybrid working. Low engagement with teams, how does that show up? About what are we missing around that diversity of thought, working for the greater peace? Our leaders have to be the people that walk the walk. As we have all heard, I'm sure, behaviour breeds behaviour. So it's very much understanding how our leaders and our managers are showing up around the impact that they then have on our colleagues. So while the qualifications and making sure we've got the systems and the processes and the structures to do the right thing, it's the people that stand up in front of your teams that inspire them, that call them to action. It's those people that are going to be really, really key to get the extra stuff done. So we look at the 5 kind of big issues. And I guess one of the things I picked out on is some of the things that we've been doing from our staff surveys, from our cultural workshops, from the training, around some of the things that are currently impacting cultures. And they're impacting the cultures of the clients we're working with, then I'm pretty confident they're going to be impacting your culture. So things that are going on. So the first one is very much around that flexibility. So hybrid working is here to stay. We are not suddenly going to go back to offices. We are talking to clients who are closing their office spaces. They are looking at more hybrid working practices, smart working, and that is, you know, for many, many employees, really, really beneficial. However, without that supportive leadership, management practice around there, what can happen is people can fall through the nets. We talked earlier, and Rachel touched about the AI, having your bot on when you're having Teams calls, if you don't want to have your camera on. That disconnect now from our colleagues, that personal disconnect is, you know, while we are more connected, we are least connected than we've ever been. So workplace flexibility is key to look around that leadership support. As leaders, setting that culture, how are they supporting their employees? What is the organisational support? How do you make people feel that they are still part of something, the bigger something? How are you encouraging your employees to be empowered to go above and beyond? again, if we go back to the lens of, you know, the damp and mould, finding our silence, we want all colleagues, especially those that are out and about within our properties and our communities with our residents, we want them to go above and beyond. How are you going to be encouraging within your cultures that discretionary effort for them to be looking at those things? Do your systems and processes make it easy for them to report issues? Do managers then, you know, support them spending the extra 10 minutes with Mrs. Jones because she needed some extra support and help with somebody? Or do those managers then chastise? Do they then, you know, perhaps, you know, dismiss or make that person feel like they shouldn't have done something? So we gear up to do one thing, but actually systems process is not for the other. The work choice, do we help people with regards to how they are, you know, working, and the tools and the systems that they're working from? Again, flexibility works for a proportion of our colleagues, but what about our frontline staff? How are they feeling, and what are we doing with regards to that culture? So an interesting fact was, almost from a survey that was taken, so 47% of people, this was a survey taken from employers across the UK, would quit or look for a new job if they were required to return to the office full time. So thinking about flexibility is here to stay. And when we're looking at that new recruitment piece, 80% of people who apply for a remote job, who were offered a job then in an office, later declined the offer. So thinking about that flexibility across your organisation, but again, how it impacts your culture. How are you spending that time to bring people together? How are you celebrating your successes? Are you just sending out messages that is negative of things that we haven't done? How are you building those teams and that communication? Our next one is around employees are looking for empathy with action. I want to say is that everybody we have spoken to for the last 6-7 months now, there is a recurring theme, which is we're busy. The pressure is on, we're busy, we've got lots of pressure, there's lots of things to do, I'm working longer hours, I'm feeling really fatigued. There's lots and lots of, you know, that kind of, just like I say, fatigue is probably the best word, apathy. But employees are looking for empathy with action. And what that really means is that, you know, as leaders and as managers, we don't just say, we know you're busy, we're all busy. It's, I know you're busy, but how can I make your life better? How can I identify and understand, you know, what needs to change? What systems and processes are we all saying that, oh, that's an absolute nightmare? However, we're all living with them. Why aren't we doing something different? It's about listening and learning. So it's encouraging people to come in and having those conversations. Colleagues are saying, yes, they say they want to listen to us, but they're not hearing, they're not doing anything. So think about how you can apply that empathy with action. Take action on supporting colleagues to have better conversations, to feel supported. Again, research shows 41% of employees feel that their leaders express empathy, but they don't actually care. They are meaningless deeds. That's quite a high percentage for people to say that people don't care. The next one is remembering the essential 80%. 50% of frontline employees feel expendable at work. Again, we have been, you know, working with colleagues from operatives, from customer services to in-house teams, leaders, managers. Again, some of the recurring things from your frontline staff is that feeling that people don't care, especially again with hybrid working. You have removed from big offices where people would walk in and know people, patches have been closed, and there is this feeling of a disconnect. So not only have we got a shadow culture, organisations are now saying we've probably got 3 or 4 different cultures. I believe, Rachel, I wrote down that 217 different cultures. I've been working with clients that they probably would say they probably do have 217 different cultures because they feel so isolated. It's about me and my team and nobody else. So 80% of your frontline staff might not have the accessibility to some of the technologies that we're talking about. They might not be able to work flexibly like we're talking about. We might not have managers that have been, you know, trained and developed to support them on every level of their organisation. So thinking about your frontline staff, how do we create an environment and a culture that everybody feels part of something, especially within hybrid working? One of the things I think is really important, and we're talking about this more and more, and I'm sure you've seen it, is around quiet quitting. Now, what is quiet quitting? Quiet quitting is that you will all have people within your organisations that now have switched off. They will not be giving you that discretionary effort. They will not be working those extra hours. They will not be going above and beyond because they are feeling so demotivated. They're feeling undervalued. They feel like you don't care. Now, they're not going to be leaving your organisations. The marketplace, as Helen said, she shared a very, slightly not cheery picture around how the sector is at the minute. People aren't going to be leaving, especially if they've been with your organisation a long period of time. But what they are going to be doing is their jobs and nothing more. Now, if we think about how we get by on that extra 10%, those emails after hours, those colleagues that do go above and beyond, and if everybody was to stop that, how would we then function as our businesses? How would we be delivering the extra things that we need? How would we be delivering on the ombudsman needs for us to be eyes and ears and thinking extra and being empathetic to our residents and tenants and be thinking about their mental health and well-being as ours? So what's causing that quiet quitting is that disconnection. There is a lack of fairness and there is a huge lack of trust across the sector. Colleagues don't trust that their managers, leaders have got their best interests at heart. It's that siloed working, it's that workload overload. People are feeling that it's too much, and you will start to see colleagues withdraw. So be mindful of that quiet quitting within your businesses. Skills building. So again, investing in your colleagues is really important. It's a thing that impacts on that culture. So again, leaders invested in colleagues at all levels of business. When we look at that kind of accidental managers, I thought this was a really interesting piece of study. So the survey was of over 4,500 workers. This is from the Chartered Management Institute. They found that those 82% of managers entered management hadn't had proper training. 82% of managers that have entered the management job have not had proper training. And then the cost of that is they're contributing to 1 to 2, 3 workers quitting. That's quite significant. So what training and development are you doing for your managers? And again, do you know their adopted leadership style? Do you know how they're going to be behaving with your colleagues? Especially from all levels of business, but we do hear very often from that kind of the frontline grassroots, you may have been a brilliant plumber and then suddenly now you're a supervisor from colleagues that were friends. Are you fully trained with how to have those difficult conversations? Have you been with an organisation a long period of time and then suddenly got this great promotion? But again, do you know how to deal with people's feelings, emotions? Are you able to manage them? So that skills building is really, really valuable. And again, it's a massive, piece for your culture. Colleagues want to be valued. They want to feel that you are invested in them, but they also want meaningful investment, not tick box exercise. So it's training for that development. Can I see a purpose for it? We've got a lot of tick box training that's going on at the moment, a lot of virtual training that's going on, where colleagues are finding that quite, they're demoted or demotivated by doing that because it's taking up their time. They're really, really busy and they don't see the purpose. So skills building is really key, but focus on training on the right areas and the right development. So my favourite ones, which is around that resilience. The amount of times we get called in, my staff just need to be more resilient to deal with the busy stuff. It's harder, we're under change, we're under challenge, we're going to go through this transition. So we hear this all the time. We want our colleagues to, but actually workplace challenges is going to require more than blunt endurance, more than that keep calm and carry on. So truly resilient organisations, we want people to thrive, not just survive. It's supporting colleagues to be the best version of them, to be able to have the confidence to speak to managers and leaders to say, this isn't working for me. Understanding the power of yes and no. When we say yes to things, we are inadvertently saying no to something else. And what are we saying no to? Making sure that colleagues feel comfortable, that they're in control of their working environment. So we're doing training around their mental toughness, looking at their emotional control, looking at are they in a good state? Do they feel like they can manage their emotions? Are they committed, and do they know that they're online, to deliver the goals and the KPIs that are asked of them? How do they feel about challenge? Are they less open to risk, and what does that create for them? What stresses and pressures that's causing? And again, that confidence, are they able to push back and have those difficult conversations with colleagues and still feel like they're remaining that relationship? So when we're looking at all these things, these are kind of the big things that we're hearing around, that making sure the skills, the training. Think about your frontline staff, think about the impact that flexibility has on culture, think about that resilience. We want people to thrive, not just survive. And your training and development, making sure that it's fit for purpose, but that personalisation, not just individualisation from your organisations. What are you starting with? That's everything from me.
Thank you, Joan. Thank you to all of our speakers this morning. It's an awful lot of information to cover in an hour session, and there's lots of nuggets there, from understanding your organisational culture, to how impactful leaders are in businesses, to being able to respond to the CIH qualification requirements, right the way through to understanding and recognising shadow cultures, and actually how do you work and listen and communicate with your people. So we've got around 15 minutes for questions. We've had a couple of questions come in the chat room. So I think Chris has actually left us now, but Chris raised a question around the qualification requirements, Kathy, and is development included as a back office, or actually a front office requirement, an operational requirement?
If development staff, did you say, Helen?
Yeah, development staff.
So
yeah.
What would you mean by development staff? Your L&D teams?
No, so building new homes, so building development, property.
So the managers are included in that, yes. Yeah.
Thought that was the case. Same as the repairs and maintenance. Yeah. And Martin, you've posed a question around, if you've got a degree in housing and you see CIHPQ, do you still need to evidence that you meet the requirements?
We believe that if you've got a degree in housing, that will exempt you from that. And again, this will be come out with further guidance and part of the consultation process.
Kathy, the reason why I asked that question was, and I put it in the note, that I sit on the CIH Professional Standards Committee, and one of the feedbacks we've had from DLUC was that they are suggesting that you would still have to evidence against the criteria, and then your employer would need to confirm that as part of the regulatory statement that you as an exec meet those requirements. So that's why I posed that question.
Yeah.
So there seems to be something coming out from DLUC at some point. So if I take the example of me, I've got a degree in housing and I've got the LPQ, I in theory would be exempt.
Yes.
But under what DLUC are saying is, no, I would need to evidence that I meet those criteria by going through some form of informal checklist that is then signed off by my employer, and then that becomes part of the regulatory statement that I am the exec responsible for housing. So it's probably not a particularly easy way of describing it, but that's what DLUC were saying when they attended the last Professional Standards Committee.
Yeah, and that's interesting because obviously one of the meetings we went on, they were saying that it is an Ofqual regulated qualification unless it's a housing degree, which you've got a housing degree. Now it seems, and yes, you will. It is about proving it. So have you got your certificate? Have you got your evidence, etc.? So yeah, it now sounds and seems as though that yes, you've got that, but there will be some kind of regulatory sort of assessment that you need to.
Yeah, and there was a bit of a joke, because those of us that have been in housing longer than 30 years, and I'm one of them, are now going in our lofts trying to find our certification because we haven't got a clue where they are.
Yeah.
It's the same basis as me trying to find my old O-level results.
Yes.
Yes, I am that old.
Yeah.
I haven't got a clue where they are.
Yeah,
you and me in the lofts.
Yeah. And that can be the sort of tricky point, because it's exactly the same when learners come to us. We have ask for evidence and, you know, they can't find it. And then a lot of the time when they're doing functional skills, for example, they have to repeat that qualification. So, but again, this will, we feel sure that this will be part of what the actual criteria is that deal when the consultation takes part, that this is the real true guidelines.
Thank you. Appreciate that clarity, Kathy.
Thank you. Is there any other questions from any of our participants today for our speakers? No? I mean, I suppose I'm interested to learn from others. Are you looking at sort of initiatives like Train the Trainer in your organisations where you've got CIH qualified staff? Are you talking to external providers? Have you not started to think about implications? So if any of you with your cameras off, fancy popping them on and sharing what your organisations are doing as well, that'd be really helpful, or use the chat room.
Helen, just to kick
Yes.
it off, we've done a very quick review internally, and we have various colleagues going through various levels of the qualification at the moment. But I have probably nearly 40 staff in my team that would be captured by the definition, none of whom have actually started the process. So we are factoring into the budget process for next year and the year after what that minimum cost might be based on CIH level 4/5. My concern is, and this is where it comes to the Professional Standards Committee, is CIH is going to be bombarded with requests for support, as are sort of our colleagues from Access and others. We've been talking to the local college. I'm based in Burton-upon-Trent in Staffordshire, who've sort of looked at us like this and said, housing qualification? What do you mean? Is that about building houses? And then we get into a huge debate that we all have about trying to explain what a housing professional is. And we all fail abysmally in doing that. My point being is there's going to be a real sort of bottleneck, in my view, of people pushing for the qualification. And I've got a fear that the larger the organisation and the more people that you have, the louder your voice is going to be heard. So there's anything that we can do with our training colleagues on this call and yourselves and others to push that, I would really, really welcome it.
Oh, I mean, we're happy and would welcome a conversation, Martin, as I'm sure our colleagues at Access would. So perhaps we get something set up with you. Thank you, Martin. I've got a lady with a hand up. I can only see your surname, I think, unfortunately, which is our Fairhurst. Hi.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Rachel. Thank you for taking my question. And apologies if this has been, for some reason I didn't get the link to the call, so I missed the first 20 minutes. So if this has been covered, I do apologise. We had kind of doing some, we've done similar to Martin, who's just spoken. We've obviously looked at people in our organisation, and we're just starting, we're calling it trailblazing. I'm not sure we're blazing any trails, but we're starting quite a lot of people on the qualification ahead of the consultation. However, my line manager, who's head of HR, was on a HR call recently where another HR manager talked about their housing organisation doing some kind of accelerated learning around professionalisation, and also that that colleagues in that organisation would be having interviews towards the qualification. Now, I know these are things that are being proposed and being considered as part of the consultation, but she got the impression that this organisation was doing that now. And I just wondered if anybody knew anything more about accelerated learning, or if there's something else that I've kind of not touched on as yet.
Thank you for that, Rachel. So, Karina, Kathy, did one of you want to come in there?
Do you want me to answer that, Karina? I can't see you, but I'll pick it up. As far as we're aware, there is no fast track RPL route at the moment. Obviously, what you have to do is prove competence, and to prove competence can be a variety of methods. The CIH qualification is a knowledge-only qualification, so to prove competence, you still have to prove that you've got the knowledge. Now, and I think that we're all, and I know that we're working through that and looking at and very supportive of a fast track route. I went on a meeting some months ago, and it was with DLUC, and this was very much the topic of conversation. Personally, because I will always kind of sort of have the employer in my mind, I personally would love to see a fast track option to come through, because it's about where's your journey? We're not all going to start on the same journey, you know, and looking at where's your starting point and how can we plan that across. The sort of general consensus on the meeting was very much about what you've got to prove learning, which you do have to prove learning. So I felt almost as though I was the only one sort of banging on the drum, if you like. Now,
but you're not aware of anything that exists currently,
no,
Kathy?
No. And actually, the sort of flip side of that is where it becomes sort of easier for because we do have to, you know, we're regulated and we do have to sort of prove a certain level of competence, and where it becomes easy for the individual or the organisation, it becomes harder for the provider, such as us. So that potentially could increase costs, etc.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Mark, I think you've got your hand up.
Yes, thanks, Helen. Just a question about those staff that were older people. So I noted that you said that care and support might be exempt. So it'd be good to understand what care and support means, because does that mean support workers? Does that mean support managers? Does that mean, you know, so we've got in Housing 21 scheme managers on each of our schemes across the country who are responsible for providing support, but also responsible for providing repairs and maintenance. So how's that going to be measured, I guess, is a question.
I think our understanding on that is it's the people who will be exempt are the individuals who provide direct care and support. Any sort of manager that is responsible for the repairs and maintenance would be in scope. But I do believe that there is more sort of clarity coming out about that as part of this consultation and sort of confirmation from DLUC.
Great, thank you.
Kathy, could I help with that one? Just to say that was discussed at the CAH, and where the supported environment is regulated by, for example, CQC, then there will not be a requirement for them to have the housing qualification. However, where it's in a support capacity, so you know where I'm going, where you've got this grey area, it is likely to be captured. So if you are working in an LD environment or a mental health environment, and it is registered with CQC, there's unlikely to be the requirement for the qualification. But if you're a tenancy sustainment officer working as part of the landlord function, perhaps attracting intensive housing management costs or charges, it is likely to be covered. So that is going to capture an awful lot of people within the extra care and supported housing, independent living environment. And that was the clarity that I think we need from DLUC. It's not there at the moment. Sorry, Kathy, I should keep raising my hand. I'm not.
No. It's very welcome, Martin. You're absolutely right. And I think this is where the sort of confusion is. There's a lot of this is what it will be like, but actually there's also some of the and this is exactly what happens to our working groups. It poses another question. You get a piece of information, we share it, and then you get another question from it.
So there's quite a lot in the chat box as well. So thank you everyone that's commented. So, you know, organisations have been mapping out roles and talking to various training providers about level 4s. Some are still waiting on clarification on roles before proceeding. One participant has said they have been approached by another training provider to complete an accelerated level 4. So that's an interesting one. So there's lots of different approaches I think we can probably take from today's session, folks, and we still have a lot of uncertainties that we still need to clarify. But I think, you know, the good thing is everyone's talking about this. People are now starting to think, plan, look at skills. We do need to think about how that will impact on recruitment. You know, we made the point earlier, we are struggling to recruit, and retain people. You know, we ourselves are recruiting at the moment, and I've been asked the question, if I'm not at CIH qualified, can I work towards it? So, you know, thinking about all of these different, you know, options for organisations and individuals as well. I'm conscious now our time is up. Is there any other burning questions before we finish today's session? No. So I'd just like to say thank you very much to all of our speakers that have taken the time to join us today. Please do order Rachel's book off Amazon, The Shadow Culture. It's an excellent read, and I think provides a lot of foresights into organisations. We will be in touch, Martin, for a chat soon. And please, any of you that have been on this session today, we will share the slides. If you'd like to contact either myself, Karina, Kathy, Rachel, Joanne, or any of our colleagues, then please do so. Thank you for taking the time today. It's lovely to see some new faces and some friends and colleagues as well on the call. So thank you, everybody. Have a good day.
Thank you.